Thanks for coming to hang out with us today. Ruck Up Buttercup is a podcast hosted by Deployed Love. We chat about real things that military families deal with and help you to love the call to action. So you know the drill. Ruck Up Buttercup. Ruck Up Buttercup podcast can be found on all your favorite streaming locations. As well, we are now available on Reach Across America Radio on Fridays at 11 p.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern. You can find Reach Across America Radio on the iHeartRadio app, the Odyssey app, and the TuneIn app. Just search the word Reach. Can't wait to see you there.
Hey everybody, we are back with another episode. It is Ashley and I am flying solo today. Sabrina has some family visiting her today in Germany, so she is not with us today, but we are here with another guest, and our topic today is all things finance, tips and tricks, and I'm really excited about this episode. So welcome, Courtney.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be able to share with the military community again, because we've been out of that for a few years. So it's fun going back into that community and hearing a little bit about your life too, because it's very different now from what we're living outside of that.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can get started.
Yeah, so I am a financial coach now, and I married my husband when he was enlisted Army, stationed in Fort Wainwright, Alaska. He was, I think, an E2. So very low pay, very low ranking, living in a very expensive cost of living place. Fairbanks, Alaska is not known for being cheap.
Nope.
And so when we got married, like most young military couples do, the spouse leaves their job. And for me, I had a really good paying job. I was a teacher in Southern California. Left that to move to Fort Wainwright in the middle of winter at negative 40 degrees. And we kind of just jumped into life with the expensive car, the big truck, that nobody can afford, that cost $700 a month, and had a pipe break in our little rental that we got. We didn't know our responsibility as renters versus the responsibility, we lived off post, versus the responsibility of the landlord, and ended up paying out $1,000 for a pipe getting fixed because they had improper heating, but we didn't know that. And so going into our big wedding ceremony that we went back home to do, that was the news we were hit with is oh, you're going to be paying $1,000. And we had no money. So fast forward a few years, we learned through many trials and errors how to manage our money better. And then my husband got out of the military. And now he's a police officer. And that was another time for us. He took a 50% pay cut getting out. And we realized oh, wow, this is really tight. I think we were living off of the same thing we did when he was enlisted, lower enlisted, yet with a higher cost of living because things have gone up over the years, especially with inflation and having 2 kids. So we had to relearn how to tighten things down. But we still were able to live really well on a much lower income at that point because we had learned to manage our money. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of our background. And now we live in Idaho in the mountains and enjoy life up here.
Great. And then, so you own Heroes Financial Coaching, correct?
Yes, that's my business.
So we will link that as well, so you guys can reach out to Courtney if you like after the episode. Your story is almost like ours. I mean, we're still active duty, but so Fort Bragg was our first duty station, but right afterwards was J-Bear, Alaska.
Oh, cool.
And so, cost of living is almost completely opposite ends of the scope for those areas. And we've actually never lived on base. We've always lived off base. So, we've always had that expense of finding, we've always been pretty fortunate. I will say we've been very fortunate in finding really good rentals. It hasn't been until the last couple years that we've had to kind of go all the way, use all of our BAA, plus maybe some out of pocket to cover housing. And that's just, I think, a poor military decision on housing, the way they do housing. We're here, our house is just covered by a BH. Everything outside of that is covered out of pocket. But we made that decision because we're not near military installation right now, so we couldn't live on base. But, we like having a big yard and things like that. So we made those choices as a family to do that. And that's kind of how we budget it. But moving expenses for a military family, a lot of people think that it's fully covered, and it's not. You don't think about all the things that cost money when you move, buying new groceries, like
Yeah,
restocking all
restocking
of
your
your
pantry.
I made the worst decision. So this past year I moved twice. Our rental that we were living in at Fort Bragg decided that they were going to not renew our lease when we only had 3.5 4 months left at Bragg and sell to friends. So we had to find another rental, which meant that we had to put another deposit down. And then, all those moving expenses were us, like rent boxes and all that kind of stuff. And you don't think about that. What's crazy is this wasn't the first time that this happened to us. We had moved because we've been at Bragg for about 4 years. And the rental house that we were in did the same thing. When the market got really great during COVID, they were like, hey, we're going to sell the house. And we were like, okay, well, we're not ready to buy. We weren't quite sure if we were going to still be there we had been there for 2 years. Weren't quite sure if we were going to be there for a year and get, like, if we're coming up on orders. So we didn't want to buy just in case we came down on orders, which of course we didn't. We were there for another 2.5 years. But yeah, that was the second time. So that's one, unfortunately, a thing that happens. If you're a rental,
it's not covered by the military either because you're moving yourself because it's not PCS.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there's things that you can go about, like you can get an AER loan. I think that's what it's called. If you have to have that. Fortunately, we just had to take all of our savings that we had. Like, it pretty much was like we saved stuff up and then all that savings went into moving. And then the same thing happened again this past year. All of our savings went into moving. Thankfully, that happened also at tax time. So we were able to, use those funds to assist in that moving. And then we PCS'd. So I will say, though, we only PCS 4 hours, and I really should have been like, we're just going to load up all the coolers we have with ice and take the stuff that's in our fridge. But because there was going to be kind of a lull of a couple of days where we weren't in the house, we were in hotels, like, I don't want to deal with that. No, I should have dealt with that because I forgot how expensive it is just to get the basics, like all of the different types of the sauces, like, dressings and things like that cost. And so just kind of building all that back up, I'm just like, oh, my grocery bill, like, it hurts my heart. I hate grocery shopping. It's one of my least favorite things to do because of how much
expensive
groceries cost. And, and I feel like it's almost doubled from like last year. Like,
I think it has gone up like 50 something percent.
It's insane. Like I feel sick every time I go grocery shopping, and I feel like I go, and it used to be able to have like a full cart, like piling, almost falling over for the price that I'm spending for like a third of the cart full.
It's so sad.
It's so sad. And I keep trying to tell myself, Ashley, it's not like you're buying all this extra stuff. It's because the cost of everything has gone up. And groceries are something that we need. It's something that every family needs and every family struggles. And, especially coming through as a newer group of soldiers coming in who are young families, your pay isn't, again, that's a misconception. Our pay isn't really that great. Yes, we get housing allowance, but that housing allowance 90% of the time isn't covered by your BAH, especially for the area you're living in, especially if you're wanting to live in a safe area, if you have kids, good school districts, things like that. So a lot of times, a lot of our budget goes towards a house that we may not be able to afford, but we're making it work because of all these other reasons, or you're living on base, which that's a whole nother topic on base housing, things like that. But it does save those I've noticed a lot more younger families living on base now, whereas when we were coming in, a lot of people were living off. A lot of people were able to, I joke, the house that we rented initially at Fort Bragg, we paid $850 for.
Wow.
When we were looking at our house the second time, that house was up on the market for rental again, and it was renting for $1,400. To me, I was just like, God, $1,400 back when we rented that for $800 was this massive 2-story, 4-bedroom, 5-bedroom house. And this is a teeny tiny little like ranch brick 3-bedroom house. Going from place to place, number one, the cost of living is a huge adjustment. So like budgeting for that and budgeting for groceries and expenses. What are some of your top suggestions for, let's focus more on our new younger families, our E2s to maybe E4s? What are some of your tips and tricks on how to budget with our current state right now, you know, our high rent prices, our gas prices, our grocery prices, like, oh my goodness, the cost of childcare, like.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think for me, like number one is actually making a budget, which sounds funny that I would say that. But honestly, most people that I've worked with as a financial coach don't even have one. They don't have a plan for their money at all. And so what kind of happens is that it's like just coming in and going out and they're hoping they make ends meet at the every month. And it's really stressful. And so like for me, I use a budgeting app. It's Every Dollar is the one I use. It's free. You can download it on your phone and your spouse's phone, which I think is the best way. But actually like putting in the numbers to see where you're at, because realistically, you might be not earning enough in order to pay the bills. But for a lot of people, they are earning enough. They just aren't doing the right things with their money to make it go far. And especially right now when like, yes, grocery prices are insane. And for most of us, we haven't gotten a raise, or it's a very little raise. I know my husband, even though we're out of the military, like his raise, I think was like a 7% raise total across the board. And he didn't get one the year before. And I mean, it added like maybe $300 a month to our budget. And we were spending way more than that on groceries because prices have gone up drastically.
Yep.
And I know for us, we used to be able to spend like $400 a month to feed our family of like 3.5, because our little guy was small then. Now it's $750 a month.
Yeah. It's
so
high.
like, yeah, it is almost doubled. And that's like, we're not getting fancy stuff. Like I don't buy hardly any pre-made meals because of the fact that I'm like, if I can stick with the staples, like the cheap snacks, then we'll save money, but it's hard. And so I think just like starting with actually creating a plan and sitting down, personally, I think if you can, if your spouse is home, sit down with your spouse and say, hey, can we talk about this? Do it in a nice tone of voice, and say, hey, this is how I'm feeling. Like I'm feeling stressed. Don't point fingers.
Yep.
And for my mistakes, don't say like, you're wasting all of our money. You eat out too much. We've made dumb choices. Like, don't say that. Just sit down and say, hey, can we just come up with a plan for our money? Because then it shows you the real picture of what's going on. And especially the lower enlisted, I mean, I think we are making like $2,400 a month when my husband was in, when he was like an E3. And that's not much money to live off of.
It's not.
If you are living on post, like that's still not a whole lot of money. And that's why, like, I think 25% of our military is living off of food stamps, if I remember right, which is pretty screwed up. If you think about it, the people defending our country are the ones who are trying just to survive.
Well, and then like, and those who need it aren't qualified because they either just make just enough too much. Like I see posts about that all the time of like, do we qualify for food stamps? I can't afford groceries. Like I can't afford all these things. And they don't qualify because they're either at that rank that they don't qualify for anymore, or they may work too, but then like it's still just not enough
to break even. And so yep. Yeah, I think like looking out for me, we always make like a list for our groceries of what are like non-negotiables. What do we have to have?
Yep.
And starting there and saying like, okay, do we feel the meat, the, fruit, the veggie category, and then the crackers for the kids because they always need crackers. And like starting there and then adding on. And so for me, what I do for groceries, we're not on post anymore, obviously, but I order my groceries online, and like Walmart Yep is a lifesaver. Not only does it save you time, but you can add up and categorize and see like, hey, am I going to meet my $150 limit for this week? And you can even have it delivered to your house. You can just pick it up for free, which is great.
Then you're not buying all the extra things. So like, oh, I want this and I want this.
Yes. It helps me with self-control, because my self-control when I walk into the grocery store goes down. Especially if there's like any type of like yummy chocolates that are sitting somewhere invisible.
Or if you see a sale that you weren't prepared for and you're like, oh, let's grab those.
Yes. And like, if you can just do it online, it's so much easier to take the emotion out of it because it's not right then and there. You can be like, oh, nope, we don't need that this week. We're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so I think for me personally, that was one of the most helpful things, even when we were still military, that I would go do grocery pickup at Walmart because the prices in the end were not saving me really anything at the commissary.
See, I rarely shopped at the commissary because I found shopping at local stores, I was able to find better deals. So for like here we have Kroger, and
they're amazing.
I typically go to Kroger now to buy my groceries because they usually have great sales. Like, the chicken I normally get was buy one, get one free last week. So I was like, score and I honestly should have bought double of what I bought because it was on sale. Because when I went back the following week, it wasn't on sale again. I 100% agree. Like I actually meal plan all of the week. And then whether I stick to that like on the day is one thing, but I'll go through and be like, okay, I need carrots for this meal. Let's make another meal later down the road that I need carrots so I can use all the carrots that I'm going to purchase for that one meal instead of buying it for that one meal and it just sits there and then gets tossed out.
Yes. And I think that's huge too, because a lot of people don't meal plan. And it does, it saves you money because it gives you a plan for what you need at the store rather than running in every day after work. Yeah. Which is a lot of people do. And
which is what I've been doing this past week because I haven't meal planned this week. So I went into the store yesterday. I was like, okay, we're only going to get this. Like we were only going to go get milk and coffee and a couple of things until I can meal plan. And then I was just like, you know what? Let's just grab the things while we're here. And I shouldn't have done that because I ended up, what I was hoping was only going to be like a $70 run turned to be like a $220 run. Now I did get like some cleaning supplies and dog food, but it was still not what I was expecting. And I was like, okay, but I have groceries until next payday. So like, I was like, okay, we're
it worked out.
It worked out, but I probably could have been a little bit better about like my budgeting and things like that. And I'm sure I actually still have to go back and get, because I forgot milk, so I have to go back to the store to pick up another gallon of milk because my family drinks milk like it's water.
Yes.
Or like what they would think it's water. Like we should have a dairy cow to save us the amount of money we spend on milk. But yeah, I 100% agree. Like having that list, sticking to that list. I typically will stick to that list. And if I have the kids I hate grocery shopping with my kids. They are my spenders. So like, Mom, can I get this? And that's what happened yesterday at the store. They're like, Mom, can we get this? Okay, yeah, that's fine. We need more snacks. Or no, not this time. So I've learned that if I go solo, it's easier for me to do. I want to get behind ordering them online and picking up, but I've had bad experiences in the past of like produce not being good.
I've heard that. I've never had that issue with Kroger, which is my regular pickup.
Which I haven't tried Kroger yet because we didn't have a Kroger at Bragg where we were. So I'm curious. Kroger's produce overall seems to be pretty good from what I've seen. So, and it hasn't gone bad because I've tried Aldi's in the past. And I love Aldi's, but I feel like their produce gets bad really fast for what I shop for because I try to go just once a week.
Yeah.
And, if it's a meal at the end of the week, it's usually bad. So then I have to go back to the store and buy it again. Aldi's is great for a lot of things, but I also they still have a lot of things that I can't get there. So then I'm going to another store to get things. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to grab these things while I'm here, even though I don't need them, but I'm here. So it's kind of a check and balance. Like, you have to
you need what you need, but it's also like, how can I do this in the most affordable way? And for me, I do Kroger all the time because we have Fred Meyer's here.
I love Fred Meyer's.
Oh, it's amazing.
Kroger. I believe they're owned by the same company.
They are. Yes. It's all Kroger.
Yeah.
They just have different names, but here it's like a department store essentially with a grocery store.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And it's amazing though, because when I do my online grocery pickup, almost every single week, there's like a $15 off coupon. And if you go, I don't know what day of the month it is. It might be like the 15th of the month. They have a military discount. And I think it's like 10% off. So you should look at that. I'm not sure what the day is, but for sure they offer that. And Albertsons is another one I think that offers military discount too. I think for active duty, maybe retired, probably not veterans. Veterans don't get much of anything if they're not retired. But for me, I get $15 off almost every order from Kroger, and they grocery shop for me, which saves me time, and they don't charge me anything for that. So especially if you're listening and you're maybe a new mom and you have a newborn and you don't want to go to the grocery store, or you have two crazy, I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and I want to avoid the grocery store at all costs.
It's so stressful.
And I'm like, why would I go waste another hour doing that when they will do it for me for free? And I get this coupon because I did pickup.
Yeah. Well, and I love how I can get points for gas too. So, I've been able to save 50 cents on a gallon the last few times I've gone to get gas at Kroger, just because I've been going grocery shopping. And I was like, that alone right there has been, that saves a lot of money there. So, finding ways to.
And you can click all the coupons online, which is another really cool thing. If you have the app.
The couponing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So it's so much easier than old fashioned couponing, because I do not want to sit with a newspaper and cut out coupons. but I can do it on my app. So when I'm ordering online, you just click the coupon as you go. And on Fridays, again at Kroger, I feel like this should be an ad for them. You get 4 times the gas points. And so we just earned like $1.50 because we spent $250 on groceries last
I'm
Friday.
learning all the tricks today. Go.
Yeah. And so we just went to Fred Meyer's and filled up yesterday, and we saved $1 off per gallon because from like less than 1 month's worth of groceries that we had bought there, because it was 4 times on Fridays if you clip the online coupon. So there's some great, honestly, deals that I think personally, when I stopped shopping at the commissary and went to Walmart, or if I would have realized like Fred Meyer's was so awesome back then, I would have done that instead. But there's some really good ways to keep you within check when it comes to budgeting too. And I think we can look a lot of times and say like, eating clean, healthier foods is more expensive.
Yeah.
And it can seem that way, especially because fruit prices have not been low this summer. Like I've always realized like strawberries, raspberries are always cheap in the summertime. Here it was not that way.
I don't feel like they were cheap at all this year. I think like they may have gone down like $1, or there may have been like a time or two when they had them on sale. But I actually started buying frozen stuff because thank goodness my kids love frozen, like blueberries and raspberries. Strawberries are a little bit harder to eat because they're a lot bigger. But it was, when the crunch time came down to it, for instance, like right now, I felt like the one container of raspberries, which one child would finish in one sitting, was $5. It's like, I'm not paying $5 for 2 handfuls of raspberries. Yeah. I'll go buy a bag of frozen ones for the same price, and it's 3 times the amount, and you're gonna still enjoy them. So thank goodness they're okay with that, because my kids are fruit lovers.
Yeah. But even buying like meat, so like meat not pre-prepared is so much cheaper than I see. Like if you go to Costco, or even if you buy like the pre-made burger patties, are typically more expensive than if you just buy ground beef.
Yep.
And even like people can compare like corn dogs, which they might appear to be cheap, but when you actually look at the price per like the package, it's typically more expensive than if you just bought like chicken legs or something like that, which might be like 99 cents on sale, depending on what your store you're looking at. And so I always look at the ad when I go grocery shopping for the week to see like what meats are on sale, what produce is on sale. And that's what we're having that week. So it was like chicken breast was on sale this week. We're having lots of chicken breast. And we're going to change it around, and we're going to make chicken burgers and like, some other kind of like soup with it or things like that. But I think it's helpful to look and say, because for most people, they were never taught of like, how do you meal plan or how do you grocery shop? They just try to figure it out as they go into the store.
We had a conversation the other day, and I can't remember who I had it with, but I was like, I wish, and I still think it's like a class you can take today. I could be wrong, but I remember taking home ec in middle school, and I remember learning things, but like in middle school, you're just like, yeah, like I just have to complete the assignment. But I really wish that this was more like ingrained in high school. How to budget, kind of going back to the budget thing and talking about like having that sit down. It's really important that both parties be on board. The amount of times I've tried to incorporate a budget, and I'm the worst offender. No fault to my husband. I mean, I'm the quickest one to say, oh, this is on sale, swipe. He's the big more ticket item, like the big purchase, or like, just bought a motorcycle.
The guns, the trucks, the fun things in life.
Yeah. And, he doesn't have a truck payment. We paid off his truck payment. But, I was just like, this, we're moving. Can we wait till after we, like, type of thing. But it's one of those things where, like, both people are on budget. Like, we both have actually been talking about it recently about, okay, hey, we should probably sit down and make a budget, because we know that we're paying a lot out of our pocket for just our living expenses. I haven't had a raise in a long time. I actually just had that conversation with the company I'm working in before. I'm like, hey, I haven't had a raise. Fortunately, they're my parents. And I was just like, I know I haven't had a raise. You're focused on other things, but it's been 2 years.
Like the cost of living has gone up a lot in 2 years.
I was like, I'm not asking for much, but hey, we should, you've given everybody else a raise. How about me now? They were like, you're right. Okay, next pay period, you'll have your raise. We just don't know what it's going to be yet. Eventually we'll get you to this point, but it may be here. And I was like, it's fine. But, having those conversations with your employers too is important too. I think like, the cost of living has gone up. And if you feel like you're ready for a raise, like having those conversations with your employers could help with that. But once you get that raise, just don't use it as like, oh, we have that extra $300 in our pocket. Make sure that you're using it towards something to, whether it's building that emergency fund or paying off a credit card, because we all know as military families, we probably have at least one credit card maxed out. And it's just kind of come with I remember when we first moved to J-Bear, we were like, okay, we need a new bedroom set. We had a really cheap IKEA bedroom set when we first got married that I picked up because I'm a huge thrifter. I usually buy everything used, but we're like, you know what? We're moving. Let's get us a nice bedroom set. I regret that decision. Like I wish I had been like, let me first see if I can find something super nice on like, Marketplace wasn't really that big. So Craigslist was pretty big back in the day. And so I was like, well, let me see if I can find something. And we ended up getting a star card for the PX.
I love it.
And we bought 2 dressers. So a dresser for him, a dresser for me, and a new
like a bed frame.
Box. And I can't remember if we bought the bed frame. We didn't buy a new bed frame because we actually bought a bed frame right beforehand that we bought with like his like money he got from deployment before we moved. So we already had a new bed frame, which costs a lot, but that one we didn't use a card for. We had used the money we had kind of saved up from, him being deployed, but we did buy a new mattress. So we still had our old mattress that we had bought used from someone who had like PCS'd. And so we're like, okay, let's get us a new mattress and box spring. So we bought the mattress and box spring and the 2 dressers. And then that gave us some furniture while we waited for our stuff to get delivered. And it took us so unbelievably long to pay off that stuff because it was just like, oh, it's on the card. It's fine. Like, if you have a star card, you know that you can't miss payments on that one because they'll contact command. So that was like the only one that we made the payments, but we made that very bare minimum payment for that bad boy. But yeah, we took that credit card. That credit card got maxed as soon as we got it with the stuff. And then my husband had another credit card. I don't remember what he used it for, but he had that one max. And then student loans.
So expensive. And I was going to say too, like, it's not always for like people who are listening. It's not always for like bad reasons that we're putting things on the credit card either. Like, it's not just because we're like always, sometimes it's yes, wasteful spending, but sometimes it's like car repairs of I was
going to say tires,
thousands of dollars of car repairs that we had put on our credit card, and we got ours maxed to $17,000. Yeah. Before my husband deployed, it was at $17,000, and I was like, "What have we done?" Because it's like 20-something% interest.
Yeah,
and using those times like deployment, if your spouse is gone, to use that like separation pay to pay it down, or if you don't have kids yet, like use that time to work extra. That's what I did. I went and I worked full time because when my husband was home, he was a Black Hawk crew chief. And so his schedule was constantly changing if he was working days or nights. And I was like, I want to see him if he's home. So I want a flexible schedule. But when he was gone for 10 months, I picked up so many like jobs and things like that to pay off those debts because it was worth it to me. And if you have kids, it's different because if you're paying for childcare, it's probably not worth it to go get a cheap job. You're not going to break even. But there are so many side jobs that people can do too. Like I did grocery delivery with my kids in the back of my car one time. And obviously pick a safe location. If you're living in a dangerous location, please don't do grocery delivery or like Grubhub. But if you're in a safe location, like those are things for me. I brought in a couple $100 extra per month doing it. And I was making with tips like $30 an hour sometimes, dropping people's groceries off from Walmart.
Which is way better than what you would probably get at like working like a short part-time job. Like
find something if you can to bring in that extra income if you're coming in below. Because it does make your money go further, especially if you have a budget and you have a goal for that money of like, hey, we're going to use this extra income to pay off the credit card debt. Or we talked briefly emergency funds. But an emergency fund is just having money in savings for an emergency. And we all know like Murphy's law of the military life. Like if it's going to happen, it's going to happen when your spouse is gone and you're going to have to figure it out by yourself. And so like having at least 1 month of your expenses in savings is the way to start. And then once you pay off those credit cards, build it up to like 4 to 6 months and use those things. Like for us, when we moved from Fort Wainwright we went to JBLM. So in Washington next. It was a very long drive. We did a partial Diddy move and we made probably like $10,000 off of that move.
Yep.
because we both drove our cars, you know, the hotels, we stayed with family if we could, 2 of the nights, and we made money. And so we use that to pay off our truck and things like
And I think
that. And
that's
so,
important because a lot of times, you know, a lot of times when we have that extra money coming in, whether it's a bonus or it's a PCS move and you get expenses, which that reminds me, I have to ask my husband about that one. And or tax time. We typically, and I know we did this in the past, where we buy it on things that we don't necessarily need, or it's a want, like, hey, like we have this extra money, let's go ahead and buy, you know, this new hunting equipment or
yeah,
whatever it may
stuff.
be. And, you know, sometimes it's okay. Like I feel like those are times where it's a little bit more acceptable to do. But like if you have a big debt, like make sure you're paying off. Like this last time we got a bunch of money back, you know, we got our deposit back from our last house. And so we were like, okay, we're going to use that to go and pay off stuff. Like, you know, we were fine right now. The kids were with my in-laws for 2 weeks. We didn't have to buy all this extra stuff.
Yeah.
And so we used that instead of putting it, I wish we put a little bit into the savings account, but we used it to pay off, you know, a bunch of things that we had kind of lined up, you know.
Which is so smart because then you're not paying interest anymore.
Yeah.
And for like the emergency fund, I was going to say too, don't leave it sitting in like your Navy Federal savings where you make 0.025%. We did that for years. And then I realized there's plenty of banks out there where they have high yield savings accounts is what they're called. And now I make almost 5% interest on my emergency fund. And so I use right now, it's called Ally Bank, and it's all online, which is great for military life because you're constantly moving around anyway. But why not make 5% off of your emergency fund and your savings sitting there and earn a little bit on it versus the inflation affecting your dollar and you're only making like 10 cents a month? It's not really worth it, you know? So put it somewhere it's going to grow, but be safe.
Yeah.
So you don't
I
lose
didn't
it.
even think about that. Like, and again, that's just something that's just not.
It's not taught. Nobody tells you.
Right now, mine is sitting in a Navy Federal savings account. No, granted, there's not a lot in it because we moved and we keep kind of dipping into that funds, but you know, I'm trying to slowly build it back up. And now I'm kind of like, I need to go look into this because like I would like to have one where I can just kind of put money in and it like saves up on it.
And if it's separate, I realized from your normal bank account, you're less likely to use it.
So we use USAA for our normal bank account.
Got it. Okay.
We actually set up a Navy Federal account a few years ago. It's been almost 6 years when some person came into my husband's recruiting office. It's like, hey, you should open this. You'll get $50 per person. And we were like, we are struggling right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, we need $50.
So he opened account, I opened account, and we actually, I think, opened up an account for my son and had that, you know, extra $150 to cover groceries when we were struggling. And we were struggling because I wasn't working at the time because military life, I actually was let go of my job because my husband, you know, be home with the kids when they were sick. I was constantly having to take off when my son was sick, you know, appointments and things like that. So I wasn't working at the time. So we were just living off of one income when we were normally living off of a 2 income. And again, that's a huge risk for military families is like, you may not be able to find that. You move and you're not going to find that second income or find a job. We've talked about this in the past where my resume has always looked like I've just kind of Googled and copied and paste. My history was only every 2.5 years I had a new job, or every 2 years, and it was just like, ooh, red flag. And that's really typical for military spouses. And so a lot of times you are kind of forced to have that one income. So I feel like nowadays there are a lot of ways to have like little quick side jobs. Like, you know, babysitting has always been there, but you know, there's just so many people offering that. So like it's whether or not you can find reoccurring thing, but you know, Grubhub, Uber, all of those things that weren't around several years ago are a great way.
Yes, because I wasn't around when I was military either. And
I would have loved to have had that opportunity as a younger, like when we were younger, because, you know, I was a waitress, a bartender, things like that. So I was able to pick up shifts and here and there. But like, I mean, if I could have just been like, I'm going to hop in my car and be an Uber for 2 nights a week, like that would have been perfect. Now, obviously, you want to make sure that you're comfortable doing that. Most military bases are not in the safest area. So like there's a lot that goes into like doing those type of things. But though I feel like there are so many options nowadays. Like even just
Even to make money online, like an affiliate for so many different companies.
yeah,
Like I know people who
there.
they
Like
make like they sell their makeup that they love and they just share a link and
yes,
they make like $500+ per month. I know a military spouse who does that.
yes.
And I'm like, she's making enough to like max out her Roth IRA every single month
Yep.
just from sharing about
Just
the makeup
being
she
like an
likes.
influencer, yeah, for Amazon or any business like that would
Yeah.
not, like I'm kind of like, I feel like I've thought about doing it and I'm like, I feel like I'm towards that, like, you know, I'm not the typical younger. I mean, I'm 35. I'll be 35 in a month. Oh my God. And I feel like, you know, I'm just starting to get into the TikTok scene, like, you know, going on there because that's just kind of where a lot of advertisement and things are going through. And I'm just kind of like, I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, why wasn't this around? You know, now that they have the TikTok shop and now like you can like put that on the link and people can purchase it right there and then you get whatever that is. And so there is so many things out there, like even Instacart, like
And and if you're like a stay-at-home mom, if you have little kids and you don't like you can't go out and work. I know another military spouse that I work with, and she does like the in-home daycare. She
Yep.
only has 2 other kids, but she actually gets paid money for her own child because that's how the Air Force does it, is like they give you a certain amount and then it's not a whole lot, but she gets paid for her child and then the 2 other kids. And she's
yeah, if
bringing in
you're
a
registered,
good chunk
that's
of money.
actually a good idea because if you are registered and you do all the steps, which I mean, sure, it's just paperwork and stuff like that, but yeah, you could easily do
It's
that.
worth it. She's bringing in multiple $1,000s a month,
Yeah.
watching 2 other little kids. And she's still home. She gets to see her husband when he's home. I'm like, that is an amazing job that I think I wish I knew existed, but I was too afraid to look into it because I was afraid of the licensing, the paperwork.
Yeah.
It can't be that hard.
And it really isn't that hard. I mean, if you live on base, I feel like it's a little bit harder because you have to register as a business on base and things like that. But I mean, I've known spouses who have been nail techs, hair salon techs, and they, instead of doing it at a salon to save costs, they create a room in their house.
That's awesome.
And have, you know, people come there. And I personally love that more because I just get over like stimulated when I'm in like large places sometimes, or if I'm having to go with like, if I have to bring a kid, like it's just so much better of having,
or if you like dog sitting, or there's just so many things
dog
that
sitting. Yeah.
yes.
There really is a lot that you can do to
If you need
bring in
it.
extra funds if you need it. You just have to kind of look for it and get out there and do it. But also like having that budget, like making sure that you budget and both parties are on point, because the budget's not going to work if everyone who has access to the money isn't on board. That is something that I've struggled, like I said earlier, it's something I've struggled for years.
My husband and I fought so much about it for so many
Yep.
years. And like
And
now
it's
we're in
not
a place
until
where
they
like
want something or they're like, hey, we don't have any money to go do this, like that they're on board. And you know, and it's a budget, and a budget that you create is something that's not going to work in the same place. So it's something that you have to revisit anytime there's a new life change, anytime a new child is added, or a new duty station, or a job change, whether it's more money or less money. It's something you have to revisit. And
I think if they're part of creating it, it has so much more meaning. Like for my husband and I, like if we sit down together and say, hey babe, what are the things that are important for you to be in this? Then it gives him some ownership too, to say like, oh, I want to be able to buy these things that matter to me. And in order to do that, we have to not spend in this area.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also important
back.
that they can understand the cost. Like I handle all bills. I
Yes.
handle every bill minus one, which I'm almost to the point where like you need to give it to me so I can get paid on time and not start like, you know, causing bank issues like it did last month. And it's one of those things where I'm like, I don't think you realize, like, okay, or like when those bills come out, like that's important to know too. Like, okay, well, these are what we have to pay on the first of the month pay period. These are things that we pay at the second month of the pay period. Yep, we have a lot more extra funds the second pay part of the month because we don't have as much expenses that have to come out. Like what are
the mortgages do that pay period.
Yes. Yeah. So I think it's important to just have that conversation, like, or hey, I can't make the payments this month. Like you can go pay the bills on time, or I'm on a work trip. You can make sure those things are done. And it's important to have that. And I think that really does help, just being in the know, both parties, of what has to come out. And then like, this is what we typically spend on groceries. This is typically what we spend on gas. My husband's whole thing about getting the motorcycle was, I'm going to save on gas. And I'm like, I get it.
You're like, but is the payment worth it?
Well, and thank goodness the payment's not that bad. But I was like, but your brain was going, I can ride this year round. We are moving to the mountains, sir. Not ride your motorcycle
for like 6 months out of the year.
Yeah. So he's been, even though it's starting to get colder, he's still riding it because it's still really warm in the evening time frame. But I was just like, you didn't think that far. Because when we were talking about like where we were going to live, the town that we were moving to, housing was extremely expensive, like was way more than BAH covered. So we already knew we were going to have to like look outside of the town, closer to 30-40 minutes away. And I was like, we're not moving and having you commute 45 plus minutes. Like it has to be like no more than 30, no more than 35. And he's like, well, I can just ride the motorcycle. I was like, babe, mountains, it's cold. It's not Fayetteville where it's pretty warm the entire time. It's going to get cold. It's going to snow. There's going to be ice. You can't ride your motorcycle year round. And he was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And then we found a house. Of course, we found a house, and then typical military fashion, they actually moved him to a further location. So he now has a 45-minute commute every single day. And I was just like, I tried so hard. And that's just unfortunately what comes with the military.
Yeah, it's not in your control. Yep.
You can't control things, and you're going to have to readjust, and you're going to have to make budget changes.
And that's a good thing, is like, just go with the flow, because otherwise it's going to ruin your marriage. If you're stressed and arguing about finances, like,
and it's always, and that's going to be a factor.
Yeah. And like, so instead of like, yes, do the best you can, but also realize that there's things that are going to come up that are not in your control. Like it snows where we are too, and we get lots of snow. And so we got a 4-wheeler, a very used 24-year-old 4-wheeler, to plow our driveway, because last year we shoveled for 5 hours every time my husband had to go to work. That's not happening this year. And like, just expenses that come up, or your car breaks down, and if you don't have that emergency fund yet, like, and you have to put it on the credit card, don't get angry about it. Just go with the flow and start making those changes, so that way it doesn't happen next time.
Yep.
But it's not worth, one thing I think I learned was like, it's not worth fighting with my spouse about money. Like, it's better to have a peaceful marriage where we can just discuss it and have a good conversation than for me to get angry that it's not going the way I want it to go.
Yeah.
Because
it's also okay to have those expectations.
Yes, to tell them, and to tell them like, hey,
like you can't spend every month $700 on hunting or guns or whatever it is, or
we have
vice
to feed
versa.
our family.
Like, actually, did you really need to go buy another buck? I'm like, well, maybe, but it's having that set fund, like budgeting, like, hey, I really want this. How much money a month can we put aside for me to buy it in the next 2 months or 3 months? Like, having those conversations is what's really important.
I was saying, if you can too, like, sit down and plan those things out every month of like, this is what's important to me, so I want to save up for this. If you can, like, save up for date nights, because it is so important to like get away with your spouse on occasion.
And it's so expensive to do date nights because you're paying.
It is, because childcare is expensive.
I was gonna say, if you have kids, like I've been sitting here going like, we haven't had a date night in forever, and I really want to go to one, but then I'm like, it costs several $100s to go on a date night, because you're paying for childcare. And then you're paying for most likely dinner, and then an activity, or just dinner. And then usually you go to a really nice restaurant because you don't have kids. So it's usually a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, oh.
There's like YMCA, where if I know where you are, it's more rural. But for a lot of people, if you're near like a YMCA, you typically get like 2 hours of free childcare.
Well, and if you're near base, you also get, if you're deployed, you get childcare, which doesn't help with date night. But you do get hours. But there are a lot of programs where they have like free, like you get so many free childcare, or there's like the drop-in care centers, which are way cheaper than like hiring someone who's charging $20 an hour to watch your kids. Like, but it's also your comfort level.
Friend, if you have friends that you trust, like exchange, take turns, because I bet they want a date night too.
And I'm a huge advocate for that. Like, I feel there's a lot of spouses that I've had this conversation with, so many spouses. We're a tribe. We're here to support each other. We're here for that. And I've always been the type of person where like, if you need me to watch your kids, I'm going to watch them for free. I'm going to watch them, whether it's a doctor's appointment, a date night, you just need a moment by yourself. I'm here for you because I understand that. And my hope is that, you know, down the road when I need you, you'll do the same thing. And I have been so fortunate that, you know, I've been able to do that, but I've had friends who have been just like, I hate asking you all the time. I'm like, it's fine though. Like, I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm going to let you know, hey, I can't do it because of X, Y, and Z. Like, I typically won't change schedules to accommodate it. Like, if I already have plans, but like, if I don't have plans and I'm already going to be sitting at home with my kids leave me alone when they have friends over.
Yes.
Like, it's okay. And it's a huge saver. Like, hey, we're going to do date night this month. Can you watch my kids? I'll watch your kids when you have date night. And then they can plan a date night and then they're not worried about that expense. And I think that's, I think I've talked about that before.
Not feel bad asking, right? Like I feel guilty asking people to do me favors too, but if somebody asks me, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. And I'm the same way. Like, I don't like to ask, but you know,
putting yourself at the place of like, you need community and you can't do it all yourselves. Even financially, we can't do everything ourselves. And like, it's okay to ask for help. Or even like, if you're struggling with groceries, go to the food pantry. You don't have to qualify. There's so many options.
There's thankfully, being military families, there are a lot of options. You know, even if you're not a religious person, you can go talk to chaplain. Hey, we're really struggling. We need diapers. They have all of these resources at their disposal. They have gift cards on hand to be like, absolutely, here, go get diapers, go get formula, go get food. The food pantry, most every single base has a food pantry. If not one, there's at least one off base, but I was gonna say majority of them have them. And
a lot of them even have like gluten-free. If you're gluten-free or you have certain dietary restrictions, shockingly enough, they have that stuff there and people donate it. So you might as well use it because otherwise it's going to waste, you know, and like, don't feel less than if you need help. It's not even government assistance is a thing because it's not, you don't have to prove anything.
Every season is different. Like, you know, you may be going through a hard time, but down the road, you may be like, you know what? I'm going to go donate and help someone else out.
And you serve. So let people serve you, right? Like as spouses, we're constantly giving up our lives and our convenience for the sake of others. Other people have already given things to help. And so let others serve you and like be willing to take that on. There's nothing shameful in saying like, hey, it's tight right now. We haven't had a raise in the last year. And you know what? We're struggling because we had another kid.
Just asking on the Facebook pages. Like I see them all the time. Like, hey guys, we're really struggling. You know, please don't come at me for budgeting, things like that. Like, you know, number one thing, if you ever see someone like asking for help, you never know what their circumstances are. Like, you could be like, oh my God, like, why didn't you budget better? Because you still have a month left before payday, but you never know what happened. You don't know if there was unexpected medical bills because even though we have insurance, there's still things that are not covered. You know, dental,
or if their car broke down for the third time, you know,
something broke. There's so many things. And as military spouses and families, we know how much money we all make. We don't know how much they make because you don't know what rank they are. And so like, you know, I see it all the time and it really does fill my heart when I see people like, what do you need? Okay, I'm going to the store. I'll pick this up. Send me your address. I'll drop it off at your door. Or hey, I have extra diapers. Come grab them. I mean, my kids have been out of diapers for several years, and I remember the expense of diapers and wipes and all the things. And that isn't something like you kind of think about. Like on top of your grocery bill, you're also having to get all this stuff, and those are needs. And
they're not wants. They're not extras.
Not wants. They're needs
to survive. And it's okay to like use the benefits that people have given to help you out. And so like take that burden off yourself of feeling like you can't take those handouts per se. Nobody can see I'm doing quotes because it's all voice.
I do it all the time.
Hand quotes. And but realizing like you serve and it's okay for people to serve you. And I think that's an important part like of the military for us first responder community now is we're so used to giving out that we forget it's okay to be given to and to taken care of as well. But like, let people do that for you because they want to. And even if they don't know who it ever blesses, like they get to know that they have the joy of serving someone else, even if they never see them or meet them. And so take that opportunity and let people serve you. And Like, yeah, do the best you can with what you have. Budget, talk to your spouse. If your spouse is not on board, go talk to somebody together.
Yeah.
Like people are afraid of marriage counseling. No, marriage counseling is wonderful.
Yeah.
And like we all need somebody to speak into our life because we're never going
Mhm.
to agree on everything in life.
Yep. Yep. And we grow. We all grow.
Yes.
The same person that me and my husband have been married for 13 years and we've been together for 17, and we are definitely not the same as we were younger. Like, we've talked about it, like, we made some really poor, like, financial decisions when we were younger, and we're still trying to fix them.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we still make poor decisions, like, buying a motorcycle, or
Yeah, we're not perfect, right? We're all in progress.
and we're all progress, and it's okay to buy those ones,
Yeah.
because, like,
There's nothing wrong about it.
you want to make sure you're still living your life. You still want to have those things, but, like, have those conversations. Don't just go buy something without talking to your partner, and
Yes.
create that budget. That's important. Meal planning helps with the budget with food costs, especially nowadays. Pick those things, like, have those conversations, like, like I said, we had the conversation of the house wants were more important to us than maybe having an extra $100 to do whatever during the month. Like, that was important, that we had a house that fit all of our needs.
Yeah.
Which is why we chose to spend more money, because we needed a house that had 3 bedrooms minimum and an extra space, whether it was a bonus or another bedroom or something, that we could put my office, all of his boy stuff, like his man cave stuff, because most military men have a man cave, of whether it's guns or whatever it is, they have it. We all know it. Unfortunately, comes with,
Let them enjoy it, right?
let them enjoy it. And we just so happened to be able to have a space where I got to have my own space for once, and it made it worth, like, that extra $200 out of our pocket that wasn't covered by BAH.
Yeah, you might not go to Chick-fil-A as much, right?
Yep.
But you have a space that you love.
Yeah. Well, and I was like, I'm not going to go doing all these things anyways, because I'm not going to, like, because my whole thought is like, well, I'm moving. I'm not going to coffees every week for Deployed Love, and I'm not going to all these other places that I usually go to, because I'm not going to be at that place and they're not there where I'm going, and I live further away. So I have to kind of plan my days when I want to go into town. And I'm using air quotes right now, because when I'm into town, is town for me right now is about 35 minutes away, which is great. It's helped with, the spending and things like that. And I've been a little bit better about, like, whether I'm like, do I really need this, or do I really need this? Like right now I'm trying to budget in clothes, because I have a business trip to go on, and I have no business clothes because I've been stay-at-home work,
You
and
work from home.
I work from home. So I'm typically in a sweatshirt or a t-shirt, leggings. I got rid of all of my business clothes forever ago, because I wasn't working in an office, but I am going to a conference, and I'm like, I need some stuff that I can mix in to make some business casual. Thankfully, it's like a low-key conference, so I don't have to be full business, but I don't have any of these other things. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out, that, plus some extra spending money on my trip, because, we're going to Orlando. So we're going to go to Universal for the day. And I don't feel guilty about that, because I'm turning 35. It's the week after my birthday. And I'm like, you know what? That's going to be my birthday present. Like, I'm going to go to Universal for the day with my sister, who's going to the conference with me. And we're going to go she's my twin. We're going to go spend our 35th birthday and just have a fun day. And yep, it's probably not an expense I would pay right now, because of how, just moving things like that. But I'm like, I've been slowly just kind of putting $50 into this little spot, $50 into that spot here and there, to, have that cost for the ticket, cost for, food, and all the extra things that day. And it's okay to do those things. It's 100% okay.
Do it. I always say, do it in a way that doesn't add stress to your life.
Yes.
Enjoy the life you want to live. Just do it in a way that's not causing more stress. And like for us, our mortgage is more than some people would want to pay, but for us, it was worth it. We would rather live where we live and spend less on many other things in life in order to live here.
Yeah.
And everybody has to pick and choose what's important to them. Just do it in a way that doesn't stress you out, right?
Yeah.
And that it betters your life, because experiences are important. And we missed out on so many in our military life, especially living in Alaska. So many things we wish we would have done.
Yep.
But we weren't wise with our money. And so we didn't have the money to spend.
Same.
And we actually made way more money there than we even make now. I'm like, that was 7 years ago, I'm looking back, and we were bringing in probably, almost double still what we're making today.
Yeah. But
And
when you're able to
realizing,
budget and plan ahead, like, a lot of people are like,
then you can enjoy it.
yeah, well, like, so
Whereas
like
now,
I wish
like we make
traveled.
less.
Yeah.
We make less money now, but we actually have more life experiences that we
Mhm.
enjoy because we just manage our money better. That's all we had to learn to do for us, was like learn how to use the money we had. And then we became so much more successful with our finances, even on a much lower income. It was crazy to me of like, wow, we still make, my husband and I were just joking. We're like, we still make less than we did in the military.
Yeah.
But we live a better life now just because we learned how to actually use our money. And
Yeah.
so I don't underestimate like what your paycheck can do. But if you still, after you create your budget, if you're not making ends meet, go get those extra resources. And I even know like there's financial help you can get in the military community. Some people don't want to reach out, but like you can, and you can get people to walk you through, hey, how do I create a budget? If you've never been taught, like there's online videos for days that you can learn from
There's
YouTube.
so
But
many,
there
you
are
can go to
people,
ACS.
resources.
Yeah, there's so many
Yes.
organizations that have either someone they're willing to teach, or they have a class, or my CAA online. Like there's gonna be somewhere,
There's so much stuff.
somewhere. And and there's so many ways to do things. Like, I wish that we had traveled more before we had kids. I mean, now that my kids are older, it's easier to travel. My youngest is 5 and my oldest is getting ready to turn 9. So they're at that age where like traveling is not gonna be as difficult as it was when we had them younger. And I never was really thinking about it, but like, you can go do these trips, and you can, use travel agents. You can, if Disney is a trip that you want to do, but you're just so scared of the cost, you can make payment plans over in a period of time. And I was just like, that's genius, because, for me, it's always been hard. Like, we have this in the savings account and this is supposed to be for a trip, but we want this, or we need to do this. And so typically like it would just get spent for those things, and then that trip never happened. Yeah. And if that is really important and you want to budget in there, you can make payments and pay it off. So then when you go on your trip, it's already paid off. Like you don't have to.
And there's so many perks military families don't even know exist. Like
Oh
I
my
didn't know.
gosh.
There's so many discounted, if you like Disney, discounted Disney trips. Like so many resources are at your fingertips. You probably just don't know exist. And if you just
plan them
Google them,
ahead
you
of
might find
time.
some.
Yeah, because like Disney, for like you could easily do like, we planned a Disney trip last year. We didn't have any restraints because my parents were paying for it, and this was kind of their like, hey, we've been very busy for the last several years setting up the business. We want to take the family. We're staying at deluxe, blah blah blah. We don't really care about the price tag. But when I was looking at everything, like shades of green, it's $200 a night. That's something easily that you can budget in compared to like spending, $400 a night, $500 a night. Like when I was looking at that, I was like, we can stay there, and it's still considered a deluxe resort. You still get all the deluxe features, like early entry, like all the specialties that you have. And it's super affordable. Like, when I was looking at that, I was like, oh, we could easily plan another trip for just our family, because we went with the whole family, and that was overwhelming. But like me and my husband have been talking, like we didn't have a wedding. We ended up canceling our wedding and just eloping. We didn't have a honeymoon because he was a young soldier. We didn't have the money.
Have any money? Yep.
We didn't have the wedding, so we felt weird about asking people to like send money for honeymoon. I'm sure if we did, my family would have done it. His family would have done it, but we had initially had still planned on doing a wedding the following year, which that ended up getting canceled too because of, military life and deployment rumors and things like that. And so we never had a honeymoon or anything like that. And so we've been talking about like, what, like, let's start planning a really big trip for the two of us to go take for our 15-year anniversary. Initially, we wanted to do it for 10, but that fell during COVID. And so we're like, what? Let's wait until 15. That gives us, some time to put money in our savings account and get that back up from the moves, and then plan this trip. And, it's exciting because now we have something to look forward to. We have something that we can be like, okay, this is that money is going to go over here. We're going to plan this trip. We're going to go do these things and all that kind of stuff. But that was something we could have easily done back in the day if we had known about
all the benefits.
Let's go ahead and there's so many different things out there, and we can put some in the show notes, like Armed Forces Vacation Club, which has got discounts, things like that for budgeting. But we talked about budget, we talked about meal planning to save money on groceries. We talked about, don't worry about asking for help. Is there any other final thing that you would suggest to families who are on that tight budget to kind of start doing?
I think not as much a tip as like a mindset of it's not going to be like this forever.
Right.
And like one day you will get the pay raise. And when you're managing your money well, that pay raise will go really far. Like for us next year, my husband has a huge pay raise. And we're like, wow, like that's going to change our lives so much if we don't just spend it all right, if we actually use it to reach some goals. And so realize like it might be tight right now, but number one, you're not alone. 90% of people are stressed about their money. So you're not by yourself. And then number two, like just do the best that you can do. And when that next pay raise comes or that next job promotion or things like that, when they come, like use some of that money. And I remember my husband's first sergeant said, like, always live one pay grade below where you're at. And it was some of the best advice. And for us, like as my husband gets raises, we're always like mindful of let's save some of that money or invest some of that money instead of just using it all. So I just say there's hope. Like you don't have to stay like that forever. That's how we felt. We felt like we were never going to get out of that like debt trap and the being stressed about money, but we did. And like you can do that too. And just know it might take you years to get there, but it's okay. And enjoy yourself while you're in the process.
Exactly.
Don't be miserable. Like don't feel like you can't take a vacation because you're paying off debt. Just do it in a way that's not going to cause more stress in your life.
Yep.
Because we know in our military and for me now, first responder life, like we see how short life is. And that's one of the benefits for us is we get to look at life with that mindset of like, things aren't forever, but we can also look at it and say, because things aren't forever and we don't know how many days we have, we're going to use our money to enjoy our lives, but not stress ourselves out because we've like, racked up the credit card debt too. So take the vacation, just do it in a way that you can enjoy it and not be stressed about it when you come home.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. You want to live your life. You don't want to live, I mean, paycheck to paycheck. Most families do that, but there are ways to do the things you want to do. All you have to do is ask for help or look for the resources. Deployed Love is creating resource guides currently, and we hope to have those up and ready for everybody, but it's super easy. Reach out to ACS. ACS is a great resource, and we'll have to look to see what that is in the other branches. ACS is for Army, but we can look up those for the other branches. But they have all those resources at their fingertips. They'll have all the contacts for who to give you the best answer, whether it's for whatever. I mean, use what's at your fingertips, because most people don't have this. They don't have a travel office designated for discounts for military families. They don't have a finance people who are there. Literally their job in the military is to help military members budget and do better and things like that. So use those people. Have good communication with your partner. That's really important. I feel like that's probably the number one thing I would say is the most important, because if you're not both on the same page, it's not going to be successful. And buy those once when you can, and live your best life, because that's all you can hope for. Because you're right, life is short. You never know when you'll have the experience to go on a trip or do this activity. What's great nowadays is there's so many free events out there. Utilize those events. If you're looking for something to do for your family, but you can't pay to go to the trampoline park or go to the amusement park, things like that, go do all these free events that are being hosted by other organizations, by your local towns, things like that. Because they're free. And it gets you out of the house and it's doing something to the family. There's quite a bit to do. And, that's what's important, is that you're still living your best life and still covering.
You can do both at the same time, right? You can learn how to manage your money and live an amazing life too. So
well, thank you so much for coming on, Courtney, today. We will share Courtney's information in the show notes. We will put in some of those informations that we've talked about, the resources and things like that. If you have any questions, feel free to always comment. We hope that we can provide some more information for you guys. And as always, like what we say on the podcast, rock up, Buttercup.